My name is Chad Evans. I'm with the Council on Competitiveness. On behalf of the Council and on behalf of my CEO, Deborah Wynn-Smith, we want to just thank everyone for being with us today and hope you're enjoying this evening. I'm very honored to be here now to introduce our evening's special keynote speaker, the Honorable Vanessa Chan, the Chief Commercialization Officer and the Director of the Office of Technology Transition at the U.S. Department of Energy. As you will soon learn, Vanessa brings tremendous energy herself, but also a wealth of experience in driving technology commercialization and fostering collaboration for more than 2 decades, having worked across a range of ecosystems, from academia to the startup world to the Fortune 1000. At the moment, Vanessa is on leave of absence from her position as undergraduate chair of the Material Science and Engineering Department at the University of Pennsylvania School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, having reached that distinguished role after a series of leadership positions at McKinsey, United Technology Corporation, and having earned her PhD in material science from a place called MIT. You might have heard of it. In her current roles at the Department of Energy, Vanessa really is at not only the forefront in this country, but in the forefront of the world of translating groundbreaking research and development into solutions to solve our greatest challenges. The Office of Technology Transitions is crucial in bridging that gap. We heard a little bit about that today, that gap between innovative technologies that are developed in our government and their practical application in the marketplace. So by facilitating the types of partnerships that we talked about today and ensuring that promising technologies find their way to that marketplace, Vanessa and her incredibly talented team at OTT are really making significant strides in enhancing U.S. competitiveness, advancing clean, affordable, safe, reliable, and diverse energy solutions for our country and for the world. And so I hope you look forward, as much as I am, to hearing Vanessa's insights on the current landscape for technology commercialization, the critical role that the Department of Energy plays in advancing energy solutions, and how really we can work collectively to harness innovation for a more sustainable future. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Vanessa Chan.
Wow, thanks, Chad, for that intro. Can I take you everywhere? You make me sound really kind of cool. Hopefully all of you guys are enjoying dessert, and I was told to speak for 20 minutes, which I think is kind of long for dinner, so I'll keep it a little shorter. I also would like to thank Dr. Meng Chiang, Dr. Robert Jones, Dr. Paul Kearns, and Honorable Deborah Wynn-Smith for hosting such a spectacular event on competitiveness conversations across the U.S. And a huge shout out to the conversation partners, Purdue University, Argonne National Lab, the University of Illinois System, and the Council on Competitiveness on making all of this happen. And I was super bummed I couldn't come and actually hear about all the amazing work that's being done by all of you. I told Rima, who's works at OTT over here, who's our quantum expert, I've been obsessed with the 3-body problem. For those of you who have read the books, it's all about quantum. And I was like, I wonder if they really have solved some of these things. But what I really was excited about was to hear that really the reason why you're here today is to understand how the Indiana-Illinois Innovation Corridor is helping to solve some of the nation's most pressing challenges, spanning areas across bioscience, advanced computation, clean energy and decarbonization, microelectronics, quantum, and so much more. And I just want to say a lot of those things are centered on material science and engineering, not that I'm biased or anything. Indiana and Illinois are emerging as significant hubs for innovation in semiconductors, quantum, and bioscience technologies. And what's exciting is that these 2 states are leveraging their really, really strong academic institutions, research facilities, and strategic collaborations to drive advancements in these really critical areas. It's so important because the next generation is what's going to fuel us. And at these great universities, academic institutions, that's at the heart of where we can really drive change, which is why at some point I'm going back to academia. And right now, as many of you know, microelectronics is at the center and square in the national spotlight. Congress, the White House, private industry, we're all digging into the field, and we all know we need substantially more microelectronics R&D and production here in the US. Our estimated share of the global semiconductor industry currently is definitely out of sync with our country's economic, energy, and security interests, and we have to fix that. As of 2023, only 47% of R&D, 27% of design, 12% of front-end fabrication, and less than 2% of assembly, tests, and packaging occurred in the US. And those numbers are, quite frankly, really sobering. But as the optimist, they reveal an enormous opportunity for everyone here today. There's an incredible amount of room for ideas and energy that all of you have to figure out how do we change this and really diversify and bring more balance to the microelectronics sector. However, what's super exciting for me is that this region is making notable strides in this field, creating a vibrant microelectronics innovations ecosystem to accelerate the transition of R&D to U.S. industry, which is at the heart of what we do here at OTT. OTTs, there's a lot of acronyms out there, so remember otters. OTT otters. We're the friendly animals that use tools to make the world better. So if you're like, who is that crazy lady who spoke too long over dinner? She's the head of the otters. So if you want to look us up, just remember that. And what we're trying to do is understand how do we actually help many states like yours, Indiana, Illinois, and others, become key players in the industries that they're trying to serve. And in your case, includes the global semiconductor landscape. Quantum is something which I personally just love, and there's so much potential here. And the collaboration between Purdue, Argonne, and the University of Illinois system is really creating a super robust ecosystem that is unrivaled anywhere in the world for quantum research. Quantum will be part of our computing future. Looking forward, I think we all recognize that quantum will be a disruptive technology in decades to come, with applications that are unimaginable, unless you are the author of Three-Body Problem, at this time. So the time is ripe to think together, how do we systematically break through these key quantum barriers? So here at DOE, we're playing a critical role in advancing quantum innovation science. Our activities span from basic research to applied research and commercialization and deployment. The Office of Science, which I'm sure many of you have applied grants for, is funding and stewarding basic science research in the 5 Quantum Innovation Science Information Science Centers, QIS centers, which are each led by a DOE national lab. These centers received a total of $625 million, and they're advancing quantum information science across various domains with an emphasis on superconducting quantum research and networking. Argonne, led by Paul Kearns, is actually leading a QIS center called QNext, which investigates quantum materials, quantum sensors, and quantum networks, and explores applications in energy and environment security. Here at OTT, working with the national labs, the QIS centers, the DOE applied offices, ARPA-E, and the Quantum Economic Development Consortium, QEDC, there's a lot of acronyms, remember the otters, help us identify use cases and applications for QIS, as well as supporting QIS commercialization opportunities. While we know there's an ongoing critical need for more basic science research into quantum, the energy sector in particular is in a position to explore commercial application of near-term quantum technologies. We see exciting opportunities to apply quantum communications, quantum sensing, and secure quantum communications to optimize, decarbonize, and secure our energy sector. In addition, quantum technologies could take resource exploration to create new levels. So far, there are 6 DOE offices actively engaged in advancing applied research commercialization and its practical applications. They include OTT, ARPA-E, Office of Electricity, Office of Fossil Energy and Carbon Management, Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response, CSER, and the Loan Programs Office. And between them, they're funding support ranging between $4 million to $189 million per project. So there's a lot of money going towards quantum. So in summary, at DOE, we're really promoting basic science research, applied research collaboration, commercialization to make sure the U.S. stays at the forefront of quantum information technology. And so what are we doing here as otters in order to help you guys with that? Well, the otter theme is that we are driving a private sector-led but government-enabled transition of technologies. And the reason why this is really important is that in the end, the government does have a lot of money, but it pales in comparison to the trillions of dollars that the private sector has. So what we are trying to do through the equities we've been given through the bill, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS and Science Act, is understand how do we take the money that we've been given to buy down risk, to the point where the private sector is willing to step in and actually make sustainable economic business models for themselves. And our objectives are to actually foster the ecosystem so that we work collaboratively together to make sure this happens. And the reason why I'm really excited about the bill and IRA is that traditionally I would say DOE has been much more of an R&D house before this administration. With the passage of these laws and this dollars, we end up getting demonstration and deployment as part of our portfolio. So if you think about commercialization, it's 4 stages: research to development to demonstration deployment. And before Bill and IRA, we really didn't have demonstration and deployment dollars. Now we have it, so we actually span the entire continuum of RD, D&D, and that is what commercialization is how do you traverse that RD, D&D continuum in as efficiently a way as possible and as effectively as possible, which is why it's super fun to be the head of the auditors, because that's what we think about every single day. And so we have been really creative here at OTT in trying to steward the ecosystem on how to do this. And I just want to give some examples in other ways that we've done this. I know all of you have heard about the hydrogen hubs because the Midwest has the hydrogen hub, or MACH2, and it was selected of one of 7 clean hydrogen hubs across the country. This hydrogen hub plans to produce hydrogen by leveraging diverse and abundant energy resources, including renewable energy, natural gas, and low-cost nuclear energy. And they anticipate creating 13,600 jobs. 12,100 of these will be construction jobs and 1,500 permanent jobs in this region, which is super exciting. Now, the reason why we were so gung-ho about these hydrogen hubs is hydrogen is a critical technology for the clean energy transition. And here at OTT, we're trying to figure out how do we get the entire ecosystem aligned on how do we actually commercialize hydrogen. So we put together these pathways to commercial liftoff, which are basically commercialization roadmaps for the nation of what we all need to do together, the academics, the investors, the big companies, everybody, to actually get us to the point where we actually can be manufacturing clean hydrogen at a cost where consumers are willing to pay for it. And you can find these reports. We published a dozen of them so far for different technologies. Hydrogen was one of the first ones that we did at liftoff.energy.gov. And the reason why these were critical is we learned from industry in partnership with us on what it's going to take. What are the adoption risks? What are the things besides technology that are impeding these technologies from actually making it to market? And what we found with hydrogen was that there's a couple of things that really matter. First is you actually can't get people to buy hydrogen. There's no offtake agreement until they know they have a stable supply chain. So how do we actually seed the offtake? Because unless you have offtake and people promising to purchase, you actually don't want to set the supply chain, because the supply chain is like, what if I manufacture this and nobody actually buys it? We also understood we have an issue right now with some of the costs that have to go on, especially for electrolyzers. There's a need actually to understand how do we deal with some of the safety issues with hydrogen, and also how do we actually get the midstream infrastructure in place. And with that learnings, we used it to then guide all the people applying for the hydrogen money what they had to address in order to show they had a pathway to commercial liftoff. And what's really exciting about the Biden-Harris administration is how innovative we are. So we had $8 billion for the Office of Clean Energy demonstration for these hydrogen hubs. We gave $7 billion to help the supply chain actually get stood up. And going back to private sector-led, government-enabled, the $7 billion led to $40 billion committed by the private sector to actually put money into the hubs. We then saved $1 billion to do something that has never been done before in the federal government, which is to understand how do we activate demand. And through the $1 billion, we right now are partnering with MIT, EFI, and a couple of other people to really understand how do we actually catalyze the demand offtake. Do we have something where we have guaranteed pricing on the back end so people buying off the hydrogen hubs are not absorbing all the risk? Because all of us know that in order to commercialize, you have to bring down costs. But the first people who actually are bringing something to market, their costs are high. And so unfortunately, we're all like in the Squid Games right now, where there's that game with everyone who's on a bridge and they're first in line to be 8th, 9th, or 10th, but they don't want to be in line, first in line to be first, second, or third. We as the government are trying to put those little glass tiles along so all of us can go together and drive down the risk so we can move in concert. And that's how this $1 billion also helps with this. We also are super excited about the work that we've been doing to catalyze the next generation. So here at OTT, we've been doing things like university prizes, where we have awarded students modest amounts of money, $10,000, $20,000 to start their own companies. And some of these have taken off like I've never seen before. There was a set of students out of University of Rochester who got a very modest amount to look at making some low carbon cement. They used the money to create a prototype in Rochester. Through that prototype, they were then able to get $1.2 million out of an SBR Phase 2 EPA award. And they are now actually manufacturing 50 tons of concrete, low carbon concrete, every single year. And they got the award from us 2 years ago. So that's why I talk about the next generation, is if we can catalyze them, there's amazing, amazing things they can do. And the final thing I want to leave you with is, Chad explained I've got kind of an interesting background where I've done a little bit of everything. And one of the things that was very tough for me when I was getting my PhD was understanding that we were never trained on commercialization. None of us were taught. We were taught, in fact, the opposite of commercialization. When I got my PhD at MIT, I was trying to get a science paper, which we ended up getting. I got a patent. And during this entire process, my advisor said, don't talk to anyone about your research. You don't want to get scooped. I was like, okay, I won't tell anyone what I'm doing. And then I also, was in a research group which focused on block copolymers. So every single person in my group thought block copolymers could save the world. And then the very final thing that you do when you get your PhD is you defend your PhD. You're telling everybody who's asking you questions why they're stupid and why you're the smartest person in the room, and therefore you deserve your PhD because they went through the same hazing process. So they are going to haze you. And we've got, the head of research there laughing along as we talk about this, who also was hazed when she got her PhD. So what's the problem with that? The problem with that is when you are trying to be an entrepreneur and commercialize something, if you go in defensive, you go in there not talking to anyone about what you want to do, so you want to steal their ideas, you will get nowhere. And so a lot of the work and what I've been trying to do is to teach commercialization, to understand it's not about technology push, it's about understanding what the market needs. So one of the things that we developed here at OTT were something called adoption readiness levels. How many of you guys know what TRLs are? Raise your hand, technology readiness levels. So for those of you watching by camera, everybody raise their hands. So technology readiness levels were developed by NASA in the 1970s to launch rockets to the moon, which is wonderful because we needed to do space exploration. Now, the thing with NASA is they don't care how much something costs. There's no permit you need to actually land on the moon. Like a lot of things which people care about and actually commercialize real technologies used in the world, NASA did not have to address. So we need a new language to look at other things besides technology risk that have to be addressed. So if you go to the Otter website and you can look up adoption readiness levels, we have now created a new language around commercialization, which includes things like unit cost economics, supply chain issues, workforce, community perception. Sometimes you may have something that's amazing, but the community doesn't want it in there. And we have a 1-hour workshop that we can give where after that 1 hour, you can use the ARL framework and actually understand the other things besides technology that have to be addressed for something to make it to the real world. I know quantum is still early stages, unless you're like Rima, who is able to deploy right away. But there are a lot of opportunities to start thinking now about the adoption risks that you have to do in parallel. You can't get to TRL 9 and figure everything out and then address the other things like cost and other things. You have to do those in parallel. So as a professor, I'm going to give you guys all homework, because that's what we do, is I want you guys all to go to the OTT website, look up ARLs, and just get familiar with the other things besides technology you have to worry about if you're really going to bring things to market. Because in the end, if we're really going to continue to make Indiana and Illinois thrive as being an economic hub, we have to think about the real world and think about what the market cares about, what the private sector cares about. And it's not a cop-out to be thinking about this. Technology is super important. You'll never hear me say R&D is important because that's the front end engine for commercialization. But if that's all you think about, you'll never get to demonstration deployment, which is when you can actually show your parents and your grandparents what you actually did. Other than that, you're gonna have to bring them to labs and show them what you're investigating with a thought of what it could be in the future. But if you get to deployment, you actually can get them to a hydrogen hub and say, look, this is what my research led to. So with that, I hope you guys do your homework, and I'm so looking forward to continuing to collaborate with all of you on making sure we bring quantum to life and make it a reality. So the stuff in 3-body problem is there when the aliens invade. And with that, thank you.